literally just a debt collector. Collectors were treating the people that they were calling as something to extract from, not seeing them as other humans. I saw a lot of abuse, verbal abuse, of course, not having any kind of empathy for anybody's lifestyles or situations. We had a system of notes that would show what was discussed with the claimant previously. So there was this lady that had a lot of notes in it, like, she's lying, she keeps giving a sob story. I spoke with this lady and was giving her the general spiel, and she cut me off and she said, I don't know why you guys keep calling me. I'm telling you, I'm on hospice, I'm dying. Like, I am in my sister's living room, in a medical bed, I am dying. Her sister got on and just, screaming, like, just please leave her alone. I didn't know what to do with myself, because what do you say to somebody like that?
A decades-old study found conspiracy-minded people will rate directly conflicting conspiracies as more likely than the traditional narrative. E.g., they will rate it more likely for Elvis to have been assassinated and even more likely for him still to be alive in Barbados than the mainstream OD cause of death.
It was probably one of the lowest points of my life. I would see frequently people were bringing in like $30,000 a week. There's hundreds of people working for this company. There was a lady that worked there for 16 years. She was one of those top 5, and just...
What is this? Humans inherently seek out a narrative to make the chaos of the natural world make sense to them. This is the source of religion even. Stop looking for a grand narrative. Assume the simplest explanation is the correct one before entertaining further ideas. People, I think, cling to this mindset that the government is so diabolical in those conspiratorial ideas because it gives them comfort to think it's so grand scale and beyond what they can change or influence themselves. Is often a simple explanation is something they do have the ability to influence or change. The former gives too much power and solidifies a narrative fools can digest. Yeah. I think people also personally assume that, like, because there are so many fucking harms that you're experiencing on a regular basis, that that the government must be all powerful. But that also is inherently contradictory. Like, the government is both so powerful that they can set up a fucking patsy that is virtually impossible to contradict. Okay? But they're not powerful enough to also engage in mass surveillance and find the actual shooter. Like, the State Department, do they actually have patsies, or do they actually activate like random fucking lone wolf attackers? Do they urge them on? Certainly. They do that with regular frequency. They do that usually to pat themselves in the back and celebrate their W's, that the FBI is actually out there working at the behest of the public. You know, they'll find like a random autistic teenager of Muslim background online, and they'll they'll radicalize them and then goad them into doing an act of terror only to stop them right before it happens. That kind of stuff is covered extensively by even mainstream media. Okay? The problem is, on the one hand, they do that, okay, and that happens. On the other hand, those things usually happen in the margins. Those things usually don't happen in broad daylight in front of millions of fucking eyes. Okay? And the profile of a person like that is very different than Hasanabi FBI handler. Thank you for the 5 get the subs. The profile of a person like that is very different than the profile of a guy like Luigi Mangione, who has like extensive social media footprint. You know? Who had friends who comes from a fucking wealthier background.
Thousands, tens of thousands of dollars were being brought in just by this one woman. We are incentivized to take the most amount of money from these people as
Free use Femboy, thank you for the 5 good subs.
possible without letting them know. We had full reign on adjusting what they would actually have to pay if they settled. We're paid on commission through a fee structure. So if they are making good faith payments, say $250 every 2 weeks or $250 a month, we would get 15 to 20% of that as a fee. If we were to settle a lower amount for them, we would get less in fees, and fees are what our commission is based on. The system was set up that if we showed any kind of humanity to these people, we were screwing ourselves over, and I can't tell you how many times I got in trouble for just trying to be a decent person. We are supposed to be doing this by the book. A lot of these cases,
I think all matter of conspiratorial thinking is inherently is against anti-capitalist or against materialist ways of thinking about things. You slam a conspiratorial puzzle piece into every equation you possibly can because the simple truth, a materialist analysis of the world, is too simple, where you're like, oh no, it's too boring, it's too simple. There has to be some larger there has to be some larger power players at play here. No, but literally I just had double jaw surgery a week ago, and my insurance company literally called the goddamn hospital room in the middle of the night while I was in so much goddamn pain just hours after the surgery to ask if I needed anything. Clearly just a way to get me to ask for more drugs. Like, it's so fucking scummy and devious. Your Alex Jones is a Fed theory. Yeah, I think Alex Jones could potentially be a federal agent, or I used to think that, a psyop in general, because every now and again he lands at a real conspiracy and he hammers that on over and over again. Mass surveillance by the federal government was one of them in the 90s. People laughed at him, but ultimately he was right about that. Meanwhile, he was also incredibly wrong about a ton of other conspiracies. So when the guy you're listening to has one correct conspiracy and then 98 very obviously silly, idiotic conspiracies like interdimensional vampires and the like, yeah, people are going to not believe any of the things that he's saying. That's why I used to say that Alex Jones is most likely a fucking psyop. But I don't think that he was like a federal project concocted specifically to make people not believe in any of the very obvious, very overt ways in which the government does harm to people, like mass surveillance. If the guy who's constantly chirping about mass surveillance also believes that there are lizard people around, most individuals capable of critical thinking are going to go, well, that's probably not the most truthful agent of criticism here. I think for me to believe a conspiracy theory, there has to be a shit ton of evidence. That's precisely the reason why I guess have a different attitude on Jeffrey Epstein killing himself, where I do not believe the mainstream media narrative on that. The whole of the parapolitical sphere is about how you can mask anti-communism is crazy talk.
is when people don't exchange their insurances at the time of the wreck because they're like, oh, it's fine. There's like barely a dent. My insurance will cover it. Later, when the insurance company hunts them down because they don't know that that person has insurance. That's why we're supposed to be getting their insurance. Like, that's the first thing we're supposed to check for with each call, because they might have insurance and not be on the hook for any of this. So a colleague saw me in the middle of a call, told me to pause the call, asked me what I was doing there, said I was not there for customer service. He pointed out the fact that I am poor. And he said, if I were you, I would focus on winning and not on making sure that these people have insurance or not. You need to get money. You don't need to get their insurance. That was a part of the job description, things we were trained on. If they had insurance, we were supposed to collect the data on that. And when the people that have that responsibility to do their work correctly are in it just for the greed and are completely skipping out on certain steps, lives are needlessly ruined. We would call you sometimes multiple times a week until we got the money. Just completely would not stop. I experienced one with a lady. It was a flood damage in the apartment downstairs. And the lady actually did have proof that it wasn't even her fault, but we were still pursuing her. And I tried to send it back to where we double check things. And they're like, no, she's guilty. And I'm like, no, look at the paperwork. She has clear proof that it was actually the apartment above her. And we were still calling that lady. You really can't hide. We used a program to pull up dossiers on people. So if you had the lack of luck for having the same phone number as a claimant used to have, if you worked with them, ex-spouses, we might call you. Basically keep chipping away until we find the claimant. One of my coworkers called up a wife of a man that was a truck driver. He owed roughly $55,000. And this lady was completely blindsided about this. She didn't even know he had been in a wreck. As she is becoming more and more panicked, the reality of the situation settling in, he's becoming more and more chipper. And he actually turned around and high-fived me once she started to cry. Some of the techniques I witnessed people using to harass the claimants. One person was very misogynistic towards women, would talk down to them, call them baby girl. Another person would spend his mornings conversing about different ways to lie. They would find loopholes in, say, this person might live in a state that they can't have their driver's license taken from them, but we could still threaten that maybe because maybe the state might change their mind one day and make it legal. It was quite blatantly a lie, and we were encouraged to tell that lie. One of the tactics we were supposed to use on people that said, I don't have any money, tell them, hey, do you smoke? Quit smoking. Different things that we're supposed to use as examples of things that they should quit in their own life so they can pay us money. We were told to tell them, take out some credit cards, high interest loans. That's a cycle. Once you start borrowing from one high interest thing to pay another thing like that, you're in a bad way. It's an endless loop of misery. This experience was harrowing. Just a cold splash of water in regards to what I thought our society was capable of. You would hear people screaming at people on the phone and then go to lunch and have a coffee and just happily talk about something they did on the weekend. We were completely incentivized.
This, by the way, is yet another way in which the distribution of different hands that engage in this kind of violent and cruel behavior creates not only plausible deniability, but also creates a structure where the people don't feel as though they are engaging in an act of cruelty towards those who stand towards those who have the exact same class interests as them, right? It's something that I talk about quite a bit when talking about companies like, Bain and McKinsey, like consulting agencies that are tasked with mass layoffs at the behest of company profit margins. there are a bunch of different teams at these companies, and it's no different than the ways in which back in the day a firing line would be given weapons where some people would have duds like blanks and other people would have real bullets. And the real reason why they did this, is so that people could, sleep at night, not knowing if it was their bullet that actually killed the person or if it's actually not the bullet or if they just shot a blank. There is a compartmentalization of and a normal process here that takes the blame, the individual blame, out of your hands. Yeah. Or the lethal injection with 2 buttons, one just for being for show. Yeah. A diffusion of responsibility. Exactly. When you're working in a much larger structure, when you're simply a cog in this machine, a machine that is churning out so much death and destruction, it feels as though you're just playing your part. It makes it much easier for you to just sit there and say, well, this is just my job. I'm simply just doing my job. I'm not the one who ultimately is responsible for this death and destruction. And that's how you arrive at this, and also the perverse incentive structure that they have, right? Even in a company like this, where when you're engaging in like insurance claims, where you get more money for fucking people over further, even if the person you're fucking over is identical to you in their financial circumstances, it causes you to overlook that reality so that you can focus exclusively on your immediate financial gain. Okay? Conspiracy. Oh my God, big dogs. Man, you are so fucking annoying, dude. Holy shit. Conspiracies are real, and correctly identifying them doesn't make you crazy. Historical forces determine history, but individual agency exists and can matter. Understanding this isn't reactionary. Yeah, except you just said that individual agency exists and can matter. And in order for any number of different conspiracies to actually be correct and actually be real, you need not just individual agency, you need to apply tens of thousands of people working in the most competent manner possible to engage in this kind of conspiracy. That's why I always go back to COVID narratives, right? Like, there are a shit ton of people who just genuinely were so brain broken by for-profit healthcare that they thought that the numbers of people who were dying of COVID were just false. You would need millions, not just tens of thousands, millions of healthcare professionals all across the globe working with their own individual federal health agencies all across the globe, working alongside epidemiologists all across the globe to create this grand narrative that COVID was actually killing people when it wasn't. Okay? No, you need to find a guy and pin him on a cork board. Also, medicine is good and RFK is a charlatan. Okay, you don't believe in that conspiracy, but you're believing in a fucking little, relatively harmless conspiracy on this one. My point is that the fundamentals are still the same. That's it. Also, Lolo literally expressed skepticism of the Luigi story. Sure, I'll ask him further when I see him. I don't really care, though. Like, so what? Okay, I have disagreements with Lol Overruled. I don't have to agree with 100% of the things that he says. Every conspiracy theory is impossible until it's published by a journalist. Do you think that your haphazardly put together assessment of a situation is the same as like a journalist who actually did investigative reporting? Like, you're looking at fucking Twitter threads and TikTok videos and then rehashing them in this chat Journalists, on the other hand, oftentimes if they're not working for the State Department, are literally actually doing investigative reporting. What the fuck are we doing, man? All right, we're going to get into the Matt Gaetz conversation in a second.
Things like this are one of the big reasons why people hate insurance companies. This company has absolutely ruined people's lives. 100% completely undeniable. And
Lolo didn't express skepticism. He said people should stop talking like this guy admitted shit, and if you care at all, stop assuming shit for the state. Yeah.
When I think back to that lady who was dying, she didn't deserve this. Nobody deserves.
The House.
All right, let's